My name is Patricia Anne Holloway, and for 31 years I believed that the most dangerous thing in the world was a stranger. I believed that real harm came from outside, from people who did not know you, did not love you, did not share your history and your memories and the specific texture of your life. I believed this the way you believe things that have never been tested, completely, casually, without examining the belief at all. It took one woman to teach me otherwise, and that woman was my best friend. Her name was Dana Simmons. I have known her since we were both 24 years old and newly hired at the same marketing firm in Atlanta, Georgia, Caldwell Pierce, a mid-size agency that handled regional accounts and smelled faintly of coffee and ambition. Dana was at the desk next to mine. She had short, natural hair and a laugh that filled a room and an ability to read people that I recognized immediately as a form of intelligence. The kind that does not show up on standardized tests, but that is, in the real world, worth more than almost anything else. We became friends the way people become friends at 24 when they are new to a city and hungry and figuring out what their lives are going to be. Quickly, completely, with a kind of trust that in retrospect was as much about need as it was about genuine knowing. We ate lunch together every day. We went to bars on Friday evenings and talked about work and men and our families and what we wanted from the next 10 years. We were each other's people in the way that is particular to your 20s, when the friends you make feel like family you chose, and the choosing feels like everything. I want to describe Dana accurately, which means I have to tell you both things, the thing she was before and the thing she turned out to be underneath, because people are not simply their worst moments, and what makes betrayal so devastating is not that it reveals someone to be a monster. Monsters are easy. What makes it devastating is that it reveals someone to be something more complicated than you needed them to be, at a moment when you could not afford the complexity. Dana was funny. She was genuinely, surprisingly funny, with a dry wit that arrived without warning and a gift for the perfectly timed observation that made you feel, when she aimed it at something you had also noticed, that you were both in on a joke that the rest of the world had missed. She was generous in small ways. She remembered your coffee order. She showed up when you were sick with soup from the place you liked. She sent birthday cards that were handwritten and specific rather than generic. She was the kind of friend who made you feel seen, which is, of course, exactly the kind of friend whose betrayal cuts the deepest. We both left Caldwell Pierce within 2 years of each other. I went to a larger firm across town, Hennessy Group, where I eventually made it to senior account director. Dana went freelance for a while and then joined a startup that failed and then joined another one that didn't. By the time we were both in our mid-30s, we had the shape of adult lives, careers, apartments, relationships in various stages of function and dysfunction. We lived 15 minutes from each other in the Virginia Highland neighborhood. We still had lunch every week, or close to it. The friendship had survived the move from colleagues to friends, which not all work friendships do, and I was proud of that survival. I thought it meant something about the quality of what we had. The idea came to me in the winter of 2017. I was 49 years old, and I had been at Hennessy Group for 16 years, and I was, for the first time, genuinely bored. Not the surface boredom of a slow week or a dull project, but the deeper boredom of a person who has mastered what she set out to master and does not know what comes next. I was good at my job, very good, the kind of good that stops feeling like achievement and starts feeling like maintenance. I wanted to build something of my own. The idea itself was not complicated, but it was specific in the way that good ideas are specific. I had spent 16 years watching companies struggle to connect with women over 50 in their marketing, a demographic that controlled significant purchasing power and was almost universally underserved by advertising that either ignored them entirely or condescended to them with imagery of serene gardens and gentle yoga, and the implication that what women over 50 wanted was to feel peaceful and unobtrusive. The reality, as I knew from being a woman who was almost 50 and from watching the women in my life, was something entirely different. Women over 50 were often in the most powerful, most financially capable, most creatively energized period of their lives. They were starting businesses, traveling, reinventing themselves, spending money in ways that the advertising world had almost completely failed to understand. I wanted to start a consultancy that specialized in exactly this, helping brands understand and authentically reach women over 50, not with soft-focus photography and pastel color palettes, with campaigns that treated these women as the full, complex, economically potent human beings they were. It was a niche that the industry had left almost entirely unoccupied, and it was one I believed, uniquely positioned to fill. I spent 6 months developing the concept. I worked on it evenings and weekends, building out the business model, researching the competitive landscape, identifying potential clients who would benefit most from this kind of specialized focus. I developed a name for it, Meridian. The word felt right. It suggested midpoint and power and the particular quality of light at noon, when everything is clear and fully illuminated. I built a deck. I wrote a positioning statement. I identified my first 5 target clients and drafted outreach strategies for each. And throughout all of this, I talked to Dana. This is the part I have to be honest about, the part where my own choices played a role. I did not have to tell Dana everything. I chose to. I chose to because she was my best friend, and because I was excited, and because I had never had a big idea before and I wanted to share it with someone who would understand its significance. I shared the name. I shared the positioning. I shared the deck, not as a file but in conversation, walking her through every element over lunches and dinners, and the long phone calls we had always had. I trusted her with the whole thing because that is what you do with a best friend. That is what I believed trust meant. Dana asked good questions. She was engaged, curious, enthusiastic in the specific way that felt like validation. She saw what I saw, which made me feel that what I saw was real. She pushed back on certain elements in ways that improved them. She suggested a potential first client that I had not considered. She was, in the months I was developing Meridian, one of the best thinking partners I had ever had. I told her so. I told her she was making the idea better. I told her that, when I launched, I would want her involved somehow, that I was already thinking about what that might look like. I am telling you this so you understand that what happened next did not happen to someone who was naive about people. It happened to someone who had known this person for 30 years and had therefore stopped watching her the way you watch someone you have not yet decided to trust. I did not launch Meridian in 2018 as I had planned. My mother had a health crisis in the spring that required me to spend several months traveling back and forth to Savannah, where my parents lived, and between the travel and the emotional weight of the situation and the demands of my actual job, the launch got pushed. And then pushed again. By the end of 2018, I had the idea in a drawer, fully developed, waiting for a moment that was not arriving. Dana knew this. I told her. I told her everything. In March of 2019, I was in Savannah with my parents for a long weekend when my phone buzzed with a text from a colleague in Atlanta, a woman named Sherry who worked at a competing firm and who knew I was interested in the over 50 demographic space. The text said, "Hey, did you know about this?" There was a link. I opened the link. It was a press release from a newly launched marketing consultancy called Apex Meridian. The consultancy specialized in helping brands connect authentically with women over 50. The positioning statement used phrasing that I recognized. Not because it was identical to mine, it was not identical. But it was close in the way that a rewritten document is close to the original. The structure was the same, the argument was the same, the specific insight about the underserved demographic was the same. The name was mine with a word added in front of it. The founder was Dana Simmons. I sat on my parents' back porch in Savannah for a long time without moving. I remember the quality of the light, which was the warm, heavy light of a Georgia spring morning, and the sound of my mother's wind chimes, and the way the air smelled of cut grass and something flowering. I sat in all of that, and I read the press release 3 times, and each time I read it I felt something shift further inside me. Something I did not have a precise name for, not yet anger, not yet grief, but something that was the precursor to both, the moment before the body fully understands what has happened to it. I called Dana. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, you're in Savannah, right? How's your mom?" Her voice was completely normal. That was the thing I remember most, how completely normal her voice was. "Dana," I said, "I just saw the press release." A pause, very brief. Oh, yes, I was going to tell you. Her voice had changed now, not dramatically, but perceptibly. A slight tightening. The shift of someone who has been expecting a moment and is now in it. You were going to tell me, I repeated. Pat, I want to explain. You named it Apex Meridian, I said. You used my name. It's a word, she said. Meridian is a word, you can't own a word. I listened to that sentence and felt it settle into me and understood something about the previous 30 years that I had not understood before. That a person can share your life for 3 decades and still, in the moment of crisis, reach immediately for the argument they have been preparing. She had known she would need this argument. She had been ready for it. Dana, I said very quietly, you know what you did. I developed a concept, she said, and now her voice had found its footing, had moved from caught to defended, which is a transition some people make very quickly. The concept of marketing to older women is not your intellectual property. You didn't invent the demographic. I shared my business plan with you, I said. The positioning, the model, the name. I shared all of it with you because you were my best friend and I trusted you. I'm sorry you feel that way, she said. Which is, I have since learned, the sentence people say when they want to acknowledge that you have feelings without acknowledging that those feelings are justified. I am sorry you feel that way. Not, I am sorry. Not, what I did was wrong. I am sorry you feel that way. As if the problem were the feeling, not the act that caused it. I hung up. I sat on the back porch until my mother came out and asked if I wanted more coffee. I said yes. She poured it and looked at my face and said, Patricia, what happened? And I told her. And my mother, who was 77 years old and had been watching people her entire life, said, I always thought that woman was a little too interested in everything you did. I had never heard her say anything like that before. I asked why she had never said anything. Because you loved her, she said, and it wasn't my place. I went back to Atlanta 2 days later. I did not contact Dana again. She texted twice in the following week, once to say she hoped I would give her the chance to explain properly, once to say she valued our friendship and did not want to lose it. I did not respond to either message. I was not ready to respond, and I was not sure what I would say if I were. I told Joyce first. Joyce Alderman, who had been a close friend since my Hennessy Group days, who was 61 years old and who had the particular quality of honest friendship that does not try to make you feel better before it tells you the truth. I met her for dinner at a restaurant on Amsterdam Avenue on a Tuesday evening, and I told her the whole story from the beginning. She listened without interrupting, which was characteristic of her. When I finished, she said, What do you want to do? I want to launch Meridian, I said. And as I said it, I understood that this was true, had been true all along, and that the question of what to do about Dana was separate from the question of what to do about the idea. Then launch it, Joyce said. Don't let her have the idea and the field, take the field. I went home that night and opened the folder I had built over 6 months in 2017 and 2018. Everything was there. The deck, the positioning, the client list, the financial model. It was mine. Not because I had filed a trademark or established a legal claim, but because I had built it from nothing out of 16 years of professional expertise and 6 months of sustained, focused, careful thinking. Dana had taken the shape of it. I still had the substance. I called my friend Marcus Webb the next morning. Marcus was a business attorney who had done some work for Hennessy Group over the years, and whom I trusted for exactly the same reason I trusted Joyce. He told the truth in full sentences rather than half measures. I described the situation. He was quiet for a moment and then said, Patricia, there are some things we can explore legally, but I want to be honest with you about the landscape. Proving that a business concept was stolen is very difficult when there's no written agreement, no NDA, no documentation of shared information. What you have is your testimony and what she built. Courts are reluctant to protect ideas. I know, I said. I'm not calling you about the lawsuit, Marcus. I'm calling you to ask how to build this thing properly so it's protected going forward. That, he said, I can absolutely help you with. We spent 2 hours on the phone, and I left the conversation with a clear picture of what I needed to do. Structure the business correctly from the beginning, document everything, establish the brand with care. I gave Meridian a new name that was entirely mine, Ascendant. It meant rising. It meant the moment of reaching the highest point. It meant exactly what I wanted it to mean. I gave notice at Hennessy Group in April. My boss, a man named Gerald who had known me for 14 years and who was perceptive enough to understand that when a person gives notice after 16 years they have been thinking about it for a long time, asked me simply, "Is there anything I can do to change your mind?" I said no. He shook my hand and said, "Then go do something great." I have thought about that sentence many times since. I launched Ascendant in June of 2019. The first client came through a referral from Joyce, who knew everyone. The second came through a contact I had at Hennessy Group. The third reached out to me directly after reading a piece I had written for a marketing industry publication about the over 50 demographic gap. By September, I had 4 clients. By the following spring, I had 7. By the end of 2020, in the middle of a pandemic that had reshuffled everything, and that had, in a strange and counterintuitive way, benefited a consultancy focused on a demographic that had time and money and was spending both online. I had 12 clients and was turning away work. The work itself was everything I had believed it would be. I sat across from marketing directors and brand managers and told them things about women over 50 that they had never been told in those rooms before, and I watched them hear it the way people hear something that is obvious in retrospect, with a slightly embarrassed recognition, as if they had known all along and had simply not been looking. I built campaigns that showed women over 50 running things, leading things, buying things, being complicated and funny and vital. I did the work I had always wanted to do, and I did it on my own terms, and it was good. Apex Meridian, Dana's firm, survived. I want to be accurate about this. She had a real business. She had clients. She was not incompetent. She had built something using knowledge that had come in significant part from me, but she had built it, and it existed. I tracked it from a careful distance the way you track the things that have hurt you, not with obsession, but with the particular awareness of someone who wants to know the lay of the land. In the spring of 2021, 2 years after I had hung up the phone on that back porch in Savannah, I received an email from Dana. It was long. It was carefully written. I could tell she had revised it multiple times. She acknowledged what she had done in language that was more direct than I had expected. "I took your concept and built something with it without your knowledge or permission, and I have known since the day the press release went out that what I did was wrong. I have been unable to find a way to say that to you that didn't feel inadequate. It is inadequate, I know that, but I need to say it anyway." She also said that Apex Meridian was struggling, that the initial momentum had stalled, that she had made some poor decisions about clients and cash flow and was at a point where she needed to make changes. And then she said something that required, I think, more nerve than the apology. She said she had been following Ascendant's growth and was asking whether I would consider bringing her on in some capacity. Not as a partner. She was clear about that. As a senior consultant, working under me, contributing the skills she had. She said she understood if the answer was no. She said she would not blame me. I read the email 3 times, and then I closed my laptop and went for a long walk. I want to tell you what I felt because this is the part of the story that is hardest to explain and most important to get right. I felt the email was genuine. Not entirely, there was a self-interest in it that I was not going to pretend away. She needed work. Apex Meridian was faltering. Coming to me was practical. But underneath the practicality there was something else, something that I recognized from 30 years of knowing her. She was ashamed. And Dana was not, in my experience of her, a person who admitted shame easily. It cost her something to write that email. I could feel the cost in the careful sentences. I also felt, and I want to be honest about this too, something close to satisfaction. Not cruelty, not pleasure at her failure, but the quieter satisfaction of a person who has been proved right about the quality of her own work. Ascendant was succeeding because it was built on real expertise and real vision. What she had taken was the shape. What I had kept was the thing itself, and the thing itself had turned out to matter. I called Joyce. I told her about the email. Joyce listened and then said, "What does your gut tell you?" I thought about it. "My gut tells me that she did something that was genuinely wrong and that she has known it was wrong for 2 years and that has cost her something," I said. "My gut also tells me that she is not the only person who has ever made a bad choice out of ambition and fear," Joyce said. "And professionally," I said. Professionally, she is actually talented. She would be useful. Joyce said, "So the question is whether you can separate the professional from the personal." I said, "I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out." I did not respond to Dana's email for 10 days. In those 10 days, I had several conversations. With Joyce, with Marcus, with my sister in Savannah, with a therapist I had been seeing since the pandemic who had the useful quality of asking questions that I had not thought to ask myself. The therapist asked me, if Dana were not involved, if this were simply a talented person with relevant experience who had made a serious ethical mistake in her past, what would you do? I thought about it. I said I would probably talk to her. The therapist said, "So the question is whether the specific identity of the person changes the calculus." I said, "I think the question is whether I can be her employer without becoming her friend again." The therapist said, "Those are different things. Can you hold them separately?" I said I did not know. She said, "That's an honest answer." I wrote back to Dana on a Thursday evening. My response was shorter than hers. I said that I appreciated her email and that I believed she meant what she said. I said that what she had done had caused real harm, not just to me personally, but to the project I had built and to the trust that is necessary for any meaningful professional relationship. I said that I was not interested in revisiting the decision to launch without me or in relitigating it in any form. I said that I was, in spite of everything, willing to have a conversation, not about the past, about what working together might look like going forward if it were to look like anything at all. We met for coffee at a place on Ponce de Leon that was neutral territory. Neither of us had a history there. Dana was thinner than the last time I had seen her, and there was something different about her posture, a slight contraction that had not been there before, as if she were taking up less space than she used to. She sat across from me with her hands around her coffee cup and looked at me steadily and said, "Thank you for coming." "I haven't decided anything," I said. "I came to have a conversation." "I know," she said. "That's more than I deserve." We talked for 2 hours. Not about the betrayal, not directly. We had both said what needed to be said about that in the emails, and neither of us had the appetite for another round of it in person. We talked about work, about the state of the over 50 market, which had evolved in the 2 years since I had launched Ascendant, about specific clients and specific challenges, about what she could offer and what I was looking for. Dana was, in the professional register, exactly what she had always been. Sharp, perceptive, good at reading what a problem needed. I had not forgotten this. I had simply not been in a position to engage with it. At the end of the conversation, I said, "I'm going to think about it." She said, "Of course." She did not push. She understood, I think, that pushing was not available to her in this situation. I made the decision over the following week. I made it not because I had forgiven Dana in the way the word forgiveness implies, a full restoration, a clean slate, a return to what was before. That is not what happened, and I do not want to claim it. I made the decision because of something more practical and more honest. I believed I could manage the professional relationship without confusing it for the personal one, and I believed her skills would benefit Ascendant, and I believed that the alternative, letting what she had done determine every subsequent choice I made, was a kind of ongoing harm that I was not willing to accept. She came on as a senior consultant in August of 2021. The terms were clear. She was not a partner, she did not have equity, she was a contractor with defined responsibilities and defined limits. I documented everything. Marcus reviewed the contract. There were things she would not be privy to, structural things about the business that I kept close. She understood this and did not push against it. The professional relationship worked better than I had feared, and, I will admit, slightly better than I had expected. She was good at what she did. She brought in 2 new clients in the first 6 months, one through a relationship that was entirely her own, one through a referral from a client she had managed at Apex Meridian and who had chosen to follow her when the firm closed. She contributed to pitches and campaign development with the same quality of thinking she had always had. In the professional space, we were, it turned out, genuinely compatible. The personal relationship was a different thing. It remained at a careful distance that both of us seemed to understand without discussing it. We were professional. We were occasionally almost warm. But the ease that had defined 30 years of friendship was gone, and neither of us tried to pretend otherwise. I do not know whether that ease could be rebuilt. I do not know whether I want to try. These are questions I have not answered. I am not sure they need to be answered right now. What I have answered, in the 2 years since she came on at Ascendant, is the question I was actually asking from the beginning, whether what she took from me was the thing that mattered. She took the name and the shape and a head start. She did not take the vision or the expertise or the work or the clients or the reputation that I have built by doing the work well every day for 3 years. She did not take any of that. She could not have, because none of it was in the deck I walked her through over those lunches in 2017 and 2018. All of it was in me. It had been in me for 16 years at Hennessy Group, and it came out when I needed it, and it built something real. Ascendant has 17 clients now. We ran a campaign this past spring for a national retail brand that won a regional advertising award. I was quoted in Adweek in January as one of 15 consultants to watch in the marketing industry. I have 2 full-time employees and 3 contractors, one of whom is Dana. My mother came to visit in September, and I took her to the office, and she sat in the chair across from my desk and looked around at the walls where I have hung the campaigns I am most proud of, the ones that show women who look like her age, her vitality, treated as the full and complex people they are. She looked at the walls for a long time, and then she looked at me and said, "Patricia, this is what you were always supposed to be doing." I thought about that on the drive home. I thought about the 6 months of evenings and weekends in 2017 and 2018. I thought about the press release and the back porch in Savannah and the sound of the wind chimes. I thought about Dana and the email and the 2 hours of coffee and what it cost me to write those terms into a contract and hand them to a person I had trusted for 30 years. I thought about all of it, and I thought, yes, this is what I was supposed to be doing. And the road I took to get here was longer and harder than it needed to be. And some of that is on me for choosing to trust as fully as I did. And some of it is on someone else. And some of it, I think, was simply the price of something real. Real things are not free. Real things cost the exact amount that they are worth. And Ascendant, and the work it does, and the women it serves, and the particular satisfaction of sitting in that office on a Tuesday morning when the light comes in from the east, and knowing that what I am doing is exactly what I set out to do, and that no one gave it to me and no one can take it, is worth everything I paid. My name is Patricia Anne Holloway. I am 56 years old. I am the founder of Ascendant Consulting, and I built it from nothing, and it is mine. That is the whole story. That is all of it. That is enough.